Hello, 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 people, and welcome back to an episode of the USL Show. It is great to be back. We have a lot on the horizon. A Super League Final, the first ever Super League Final with the biggest upset in Super League playoff history. Literally, yes. And a really fun host in Tampa Bay in a beautiful location. We had a firing out in Las Vegas. We'll get all into that and lots of just kind of fun movement around the league. There is so much to dive into, including a special guest a little bit later. John, how are you?
Yeah, doing really well. Excited to have what's going to be the last kind of triple pro league weekend that we get in the USL for a hot minute here.
Phil, how are you?
Doing well. Still around after what was probably the most diabolical USL match of the weekend, Oakland Roots, El Paso Locomotive 0-0. But aside from that, yeah, all good.
So before we get too far, let's go ahead and thank our wonderful patrons: Dylan Reed, William Lamb, Sandy Lester, Ryan Smelter, Matt Catpeel, Timothy Meadows, All the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NF Fresh 30, Tim Knox, Rion Lacar, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And if you want to support us even more, go check out our kit. It is the Equipped Studios kit. It is our Sounds of the Forest. It's going to help us get all the way up to Portland, Maine. It's a nice kit. It's very comfortable. It's wonderful fabric. It has a collar. There's a long sleeve and a short sleeve option if you want it. The deadline is this Friday, June 13th. That is your deadline to buy it. We may open it up later on, but there's no guarantees. As far as we know, this is a one-time and one-time only drop. You should absolutely go buy it. It's really cheap and really nice material, and it really helps us. So please check that out. Quip Studios. The link is going to be in our description. So all that.
I want to see some real sicko customization. Like if you're real, I want to see people get weirder than Kudus Lawal on my last kit, right? Like I want you to go as obscure, the most random USL player you can get on the back of this kit. That's what I want to see. And I want to see this all over social media, just the most sicko customization.
I'm just getting lads across the back.
Hey, I mean, last week was full of lads with all of our Loudon content. So, check all that out. Backfield had some good stuff. We had an interview here. That was a good time. So lots of lads to go around. Give us the most sicko stuff. By the way, customization's free. So enjoy it. Give us some real sicko stuff. It's fun. So, hey, let's go ahead and get into our first ever USL Super League Final, as it is a Florida derby. We have Tampa Bay Sun hosting Fort Lauderdale United. The Sun take down the Trinity 2-1 in what we thought was going to be the most exciting playoff matchup of the weekend, but not to be outdone by a 120th, 119th minute winner from Fort Lauderdale to down Carolina Ascent. While the conversation should start with the Sun because chronological, we do need to discuss the game winner for Fort Lauderdale. Many people, including myself, saw offside from the very beginning, but there were some photos going around that showed that maybe there was an Ascent player keeping Locklear on side. I just want to know your opinions on that first and foremost. John.
I can't remember who posted the very MS Paint breakdown of the play on Blue Sky with like body outlines and lines across the 18-yard box. Based on that, based on the law and a very strict reading, I think I would give that as being onside and let the goal stand. But in a league without VAR, I don't know. Sometimes you just got to roll with the punches. It's tough, but yeah, that's on for me.
Phil?
Yeah, it was one of those where in real time I thought surely off, and then as I saw it, it's that far side player for Ascent that just seems to keep a trailing leg, like maybe keeping her onside for what was a very dramatic winner. And I would like to, revisit what we said towards the end of the Super League season on this very podcast, which is Ascent have already proven themselves to be the best team in the league. Whatever happened in the playoffs can't take away from that. And this shows just how fine the margins are when it comes to the playoffs. Like, you can have just an absolutely amazing season, run away with it, and in the end, a single moment can knock you out. So, yeah, credit to Fort Lauderdale for the fight. And I do think she's just onside.
Yeah, my general rule of thumb is if there's no VAR and you have to pull out like Zapruder film to try to prove your points, you just go with the ref's decision. That's my go-to. I think what really sold that it might have been offside to a lot of people is that every single Ascent player stopped. Every single one stopped. Goalkeeper didn't even think about diving. None of the defenders even thought about tracking back. Locklear was the only one that even thought about taking the shot. Heck, even half of the Fort Lauderdale players just stood there thinking that she was off. The play looked off until, well, you get again Zapruder film that shows maybe she was onside. Good on her for taking her chance. It's an awful way to end your season, and you feel awful for the Ascent. But the whole thing that you tell your kids, if you're a coach, from when they're 5 years old up until high school, college, now professionals, you go till you hear a whistle. This is a prime example that every coach should circle and be like, this is why. It could cost you in the most crucial of times. But I just kind of want to talk. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this match as well, because the way we're kind of talking is that maybe Fort Lauderdale didn't deserve this, but especially when you look at the 70th to 90-minute mark, it was Fort Lauderdale's game. Carolina looked the second best team with as direct as Fort Lauderdale was. Carolina Ascent did not really seem to have an answer. That said, in the first half, the Ascent were causing chaos with the amount of pressing they were doing. They were really causing Fort Lauderdale issues. Is this a story of Carolina didn't take their chances when they came, or is it just, Fort Lauderdale weathered the storm and came out on top?
I think to an extent, the Ascent came out as the hotter team. But when you look at the 120 minutes as a whole, they only got to 0.8 XG. I thought the way that Fort Lauderdale set up that midfield and was able to manipulate McCain and Daria Rajic, they limited those passing patterns that the Ascent are so reliant on, where they can get Mia Corbin going between the lines, use her as that hub, and then move forward into the final third. To me, that felt like a really well-designed setup from Tyrone Mears in this game. And some of the way that Fort Lauderdale attacks is very feast and famine. It's a lot of those kind of longer balls into the channels, see what you can get from Gordon and Hamid. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, it can be a bit ugly. So they trusted that game plan. They wrote it out. I know the natural tendency is let's focus on the big call at the end. But I think if you're Fort Lauderdale, you feel good about how you executed here. You feel like you deserved to advance.
It felt like a game that emphasized, you mentioned the pressing, Kaylor, early on from Carolina, and it did feel like a game where both teams kind of showed what got them to this point, right? Carolina with this relentless pressure and exactly like what you saw early on, and Fort Lauderdale with being able to weather the pressure, find their moments, and in this crucial match they were able to make the most of it. I do think there's something, I don't know, there's something poetic about a guy like Tyrone Mears like seeing out this kind of scrappy 120-minute winner. Like, it just feels very English in a very specific way, like something you'd see in a championship playoff final or something like that. And yeah, it was, I will say, in terms of drama, exactly what you want to see, if you're the Super League, because that's a lot of there was a lot of excitement generated from this game and a lot of conversation, which ultimately is part of what you're trying to do too.
So what about the second half of this final with the Tampa Bay Sun downing of Dallas Trinity? The Trinity get an early goal. The Sun equalized from Flint from the spot. Second half happens. Giamona gets what ends up being the game winner. The Sun, survive what the Trinity were throwing at them because the Trinity has a lot to go forward. The Sun see it out at home. I mean, this felt like a very, very even matchup the entire night. I think there's a way where the Trinity feel like maybe they're a little hard done by to not at least push it to extra time. But you also have to give a lot of credit to the Sun for being strong defensively and sticking to their guns.
Yeah, and I think this was another game really where you said it yourself. The Sun stuck to their guns. They trusted the fact that Natasha Flint can dominate in the midfield, and I thought she was tremendous in this game, kind of doing like hold up number 10 things for a lot of the time. And the way that they used her, they let they let Jade Moore advance up from the pivot to kind of partner with her between the lines. Then you get the second wave into Giamona and Nacello. It's very intentional. It's what we've seen all season long from this team. Denise Schulte-Brown has them playing so physically, and I think that just wore Dallas down over the course of the match. And credit to Trinity for keeping the effort up. I thought they looked strong at the end. It's tough when you go out like this in a playoff game, but yeah, Tampa Bay, much like Fort Lauderdale, I feel like they executed and they had the clearer game plan of how they wanted to go at this one.
I think Tampa Bay's thrived on like gumming up the works against teams that can really attack offensively and really get after you. And they've gotten a lot of results this season in just making those teams work a lot harder than they're used to for chances. And I think in this one, just limiting the amount that Dallas was able to threaten in front of goal it ended up being almost like a math problem of if we can keep them below like 10 decent looks, we can probably get out of this one. And holding them to just what was it, like 6 shots across the whole 90 minutes? That's really impressive from Tampa Bay. And I think it's nice to see teams using what got them to this point to, like you said, Kaylor, like sticking to their guns and finding their way to the final by virtue of the stuff that's gotten them into the playoffs in the first place.
The one thing from the Sun, and I'm trying to remember a date off the top of my head. I know which match it was, but I don't remember the opponent. It was the first ever red card in league history, whatever date that was, whatever match that was.
Yeah.
We
Jordan
talked
Listro.
about, yes, Jordan Listro, but I don't remember who they were playing. I can't remember which match it was. But I remember us distinctly talking about how the Sun showed us something in that match that we hadn't seen from them, which was, like rock hard defensive solidity, where they sat back, absorbed pressure, because everything they were built off of, which is press the crap out of goal kicks and just try to intercept every ball they can, they sat back and really defended in a well-structured kind of a like 4-4-1 shape that entire time and just sat in and absorbed and absorbed and absorbed. And while they didn't quite get that defensive in this match, they showed defensive solidity that we didn't really see in the first half of the season. And it's really cool to see a team grow like that over the season.
Well, not to be the Ryan of this episode, but I did look it up, and that game in which Tampa Bay Sun won 1-0 despite playing roughly 75 minutes down to 10 men was against Dallas. So yeah, bit of a blueprint here then maybe for seeing out a game against this Trinity side.
And we're kind of framing this as if Dallas like had a barrage of opportunities. They had six shot attempts in this game. Like that's nothing, and that speaks to the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's really when I'm like talking about just like how well they were like solidly and how they were able to withstand the pressure. Dallas has arguably the best midfield in the league. and they kept them from doing their thing. Like the Sun midfield withstood the pressure of Dallas's midfield, which I think if you were to look at the first team, right, your first team all USL, your second team all USL that dropped today, a lot of people seem to be thinking that maybe the Trinity had a strong presence there, and the Sun withstood it and were able to stand firm before they even got tested. And I think that's really impressive out of the Sun. So previewing,
and to be fair,
go ahead.
Just very briefly, to be fair, overcoming any team that has someone named Cameron Lancaster in a semifinal in the USL, statistically speaking, it just doesn't happen that often that you beat that team. So, yeah.
Cameron Lancaster goes into Tampa Bay in a playoff game, and somehow it doesn't hurt them again. So, how about this final? This has been a closely contested match. 3 draws, 1 win. The 1 win being the most recent matchup to the Tampa Bay Sun, 2-0. But everything else has been 1-1, 2-2, 1-1. This is one of the few matchups that 3 of them came in the second half split. They only played 1 time in the first half. So these teams have played each other in this iteration of these teams. It's not like they played 3 first half matches. They kind of or first half of the season matches. They've kind of changed. They have seen this version of each other. What are we kind of seeing here? Because conventional wisdom tells you the Sun should win this. Because as you said, John, Fort Lauderdale is feast or famine. That's kind of what they are. But they were supposed to lose to Carolina. Carolina was easily the best team in the league, and they handled it well and came out on top for a good reason. Is there a world where Fort Lauderdale comes out as the champions?
I mean, I think it's really easy to see how it can happen because the lightning in the bottle effect of Hamid and Gordon, the movement we saw from Locklear in the semifinal was unbelievable. They've got 3 players who are so good about combining and making these complementary runs that really force defenders to ask questions of themselves in how they're going at certain situations. And I think the way that Fort Lauderdale kind of set themselves up, they've got a base with pretty deep fullbacks a lot of the time and a double pivot a lot of the time. That means they're steady. That means they're not going to give up those dribbling opportunities for Nacello and Giamona. If they can stick to that game plan and execute like mistake-free soccer, that's the formula. Is Tampa Bay the favorite? I think so, but it's very easy to imagine the scenario where Fort Lauderdale wins this thing.
Oh no, this is just screaming penalties to me for whatever reason. Like I feel like both teams are going to be a little bit cagey. Fort Lauderdale in particular, like maybe not feeling, because they were underdogs, maybe they're feeling a little bit like, we got to take advantage of our opportunity being on this stage. And so I think both teams might take a while to like feel each other out, and then we get a scoring draw and eventually penalties. But either way, I think it'll be a hell of a final and a bit of a chess match between these 2 teams.
So obviously the Sun are going to be at home, right? And you're expecting, honestly, one of the most beautiful venues in all of U.S. soccer to be sold out. I really hope they do the riverboat entrance again. Like, please let the players walk off from the boat. Please. We need that as a society. But you expect the atmosphere obviously be on the Sun side. You expect, these super influential players. You expect a Flint to, do her thing and just being super strong up top. You expect Orcus to continue to stay strong as their goalkeeper. Hendricks has been one of the best center backs in the league. Listro has been one of the best, arguably the best midfielder in the league, according to some. You expect the Sun to be able to dominate this match. Is what has to go wrong for them to lose this match? Because we've seen the blueprint. We've seen them win 2-0 in their most recent matchup. This feels like it should be a Sun victory.
There are matches where Tampa Bay feels like they are overextending in the press at times, and there are games where their model of trying to use Flint as that kind of anchor player between the lines, then feeding into that second wave on the wings, it just doesn't connect because it is a little bit based on the long ball and those longer initiations that aren't as much of a sure thing. So if Fort Lauderdale comes in here, has a very strong second ball structure and is making those scenarios hard to execute, suddenly the formula is a little bit less successful for the Sun. And like I said, it just takes one moment for Hamid to get loose, do what she does so well in one-on-one situations. Again, like I think Tampa Bay probably wins this game, but it's a very real possibility based on what we've seen across the 4 matchups already that they don't come through.
I guess for me, and I'm just looking at just the attacking essentially 4 now, especially when you take into consideration Locklear and what she did in this most recent match. Hamid, Gordon, McCain. You can't forget about adding McCain in this situation. And now Locklear being added to the fray. If you're thinking that there's any team that can outgun you, it is Fort Lauderdale. I don't see a world where the Suns sit back and defend on home turf. They're going to try to take it to Fort Lauderdale, maybe leaving them a little bit more exposed. Phil, I'm with you here. I think at the very minimum, this is going to extra time. Maybe we get a game winner in extra time. I'm not going to just boldly predict penalties, but I do think this feels like one of those cagey matches that 1-1s into extra time.
Yeah. I don't know.
In which case you trust Orcus.
Yes, massively. So I guess predictions. John, who do you have?
Tampa Bay, and I'll call it 2-1 in regulation.
Phil?
I'll just to be contrarian, I'll say Fort Lauderdale on penalties. Tyrone Mears, champagne bath, Super League title in his inaugural season.
I want to go with the Sun in extra time. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win for the Sun. That said, I mean, Fort Lauderdale already showed that they can take down Giants, and they just do not care. So,
and we have Olivier Giroux in the chat saying that Fort Lauderdale is going to take it. So, I don't know what else anyone needs.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed to know. Well, look, with all that, we have a special guest joining us tonight. We are going to be moving over to League One and the championship. This is someone who's been on our show before. You recently saw him with our League One preview. It turns out almost all the things that he said in those previews have come true. It turns out the Irishman just made no ball. You know him as a Jaeger Cup Meister champion. We know him as a good friend. Eamon Zayed, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Not sure about your words about the predictions. I've already had a couple of people reach out to me about some of those predictions. Listen, some of them are right, some of them are wrong, but that's the beauty of the game. I mean, especially with so many new teams coming into USL League One and USL Championship. It was great to see how those teams started and then how some of the teams have adapted to the league and overcome some of the challenges. And then some of them have gone the other way. But it's been really exciting and interesting first 10 to 12 games so far in USL League One, and then obviously the championship. There's a lot to talk about as well.
Well, let's talk about some of those challenges because we've seen a lot of teams be really proactive this year. Birmingham got the sackings going. Then Tampa Bay follows suit. Oakland Roots fired, then hired all in the same day. And now today, Nocerino announced to be out with Las Vegas. Can't say we're entirely surprised when we see the results and see the step back that they had taken from last year with largely the same core coming back. Eamon, obviously, Nocerino has a very different style than Sanchez did last year. Very different setups. Why did it go wrong in Las Vegas?
Look, for me, there's a couple of reasons. I'll say this, if I can just kind of go back a little bit. Like, American soccer is different. It's, you got it. For me, the most successful coaches usually have had some kind of stint in the league or in the States before they stepped into a coaching position. I'm actually quite sure. Look, there's obviously coaches that have come over and done well as a first-time coach, but not many do. The culture is different. The style of play is different. So I think he obviously was with Miami last year, and that didn't go well at all. You would like to have thought he, second chance going to Vegas, working under another Italian sporting director. You learn from last year. And to be honest, I felt at the start of the season, it looked like they did all right. It looked like he had obviously adapted and learned a little bit, in terms of what the USL Championship and what is needed and what's required. But look, of late, over the last couple of months now, they were okay in April, but definitely from the turn of May, they've been awful. I mean, you look at the stats. I think they started off with a couple of clean sheets, maybe 5-6 clean sheets in their first number of games, and since then they're conceding goals for fun. I was looking at some of their stats earlier. I know they've lost the last 5 out of 5. They've also conceded 15 in the last 5 games. That's obviously awful. I think they've conceded 18 altogether, and that's despite having 6 clean sheets in 12 games. So those 18 goals obviously came in 6 games, which isn't great. And then you add in the fact that they're not scoring goals. If my stat, and John, you'll tell me this or not, I don't, bar like maybe a cup game, I don't think they've scored an away goal in the league. I think they've had mostly home games.
So that was zero away goals this season. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, the stats are there. You obviously delve into it and you wonder why. So look, they're for the most part, they're dominating possession. I can look at the Sacramento game recently, which they lost 4-0. They dominated possession. I think they had 60%, roughly 60% to Sacramento's 40% possession. But the build-up play, and again, I don't know Nocarino at all, how his ideas in the game. Obviously, when you watch Italian football, growing up watching Italian football, that was the biggest league in the world when I was growing up initially, Serie A, and it's a slow-paced game, slow-paced build-up. And if you look at Las Vegas, and for me, when I looked at them and watched them play this year, and I've watched them multiple times, very slow-paced in terms of how they play it out. Obviously, that's what they wanted. They mixed and matched, whether it was a back three, that turned into a back 5. Usually when you play back threes, it's interesting enough, if you look at the stats, usually when a team plays a back 3, they usually do dominate possession, especially when they go up against maybe a team that plays a 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1. They usually do dominate possession, but it's usually possession in their own half. They're not really doing much with the ball. They're just moving it from side to side. And that's, for me, that's how it looked when I watched Vegas. They're very predictable with their play. They didn't really have, they do have some good players, some really good players. Some of them are doing okay. Valentin Noel was exceptional last year. He's doing okay this year. I wouldn't say he's doing poorly, just maybe not like as he was last year. They're definitely missing a striker. Obviously losing Corey Bennett. I think they sold him, which is, I guess, fantastic for the club, but I don't think they replaced him at all. Johnny Rodriguez came in, and look, Johnny Rodriguez has scored, I think they've scored 7 goals this year. Johnny Rodriguez has scored 3 of them. So if he's not scoring, well, who else is going to score? Yeah. But 7 goals in 12 games is, that's awful. It's really, really poor. And you consider, I guess, the top goal scorers, if you look at it, are Charleston with 26. That's almost 4 times the number of goals that Vegas have scored. So slow, predictable. I would imagine if I was playing against them, it wouldn't be too hard to kind of analyze them and come up with a game plan. I'm not surprised with the decision at all. You know, and I will say this: they were really, really good last year under Dennis Sanchez, and it was going, whoever went in initially, it was going to be tough because the expectations have gone from Vegas were there before Dennis Sanchez, and now they're like that, and fans now expect that and they want that, and they weren't happy with what they've seen. So again, I'm not surprised. The stats tell a picture, and then you look at them, and to be honest, the stats back up what you're watching. So so again, I'm not surprised. That's my thoughts. What do you guys think?
I mean, go ahead, Phil.
Oh, I was gonna make a flippant comment about the fact that, you know, Notarino didn't favor Coleman Gannon, and I don't know about correlation versus causation, but he hasn't been in the side, and suddenly they're terrible. I do think there's something in here though about the particularly the way that Notarino structured the team, and I think we saw this in Miami where yes, he was asked to do like a lot with precious little, but he did probably less than what even like he could have done with the side that he was given. And I think it's the same with Vegas, where he's somehow like structured this side in a way that is now less than the sum of its parts, unfortunately, and he's going to bear the brunt for, you know, there was proof of concept last year from Dennis Sanchez, and so it's quite easy to say like the variable that changed is you, boss, and so yeah, unfortunately he finds himself out. I thought the hire was a bit strange from the beginning because, you know, typically when you see someone hired in for someone who's been, you know, we could say I guess poached, you know, by New Mexico in this case, you would want someone who is on the back of like a really impressive season in the league, and Notarino is off the back of probably one of the worst seasons in the championship's history. And I get it, like, you know, the tools that he had were maybe not at his disposal, but it just struck me as strange from the beginning. And to see it end 12 games in, I think it's unfortunate for Lights, who organizationally are being taken more seriously now than they were, you know, a couple of years ago. So chance to hit the reset button now, but yeah, it's gone, I think, worse than anyone probably could have foreseen. But for me, it was just always a bit of an odd appointment.
Yeah, and I kind of look at Noel as a player that's really like a taking the temperature of how this team has changed. Last season, he almost played as a false nine a lot of the time, really linking play in the final third. He feels so much less engaged in those dangerous areas. I think his touches are down 10, 15%. He's creating a third as many chances this season. That speaks to the fact that Notarino never really landed on a structure, a system, a way he wanted this team to play, which was really the problem for him in Miami as well. And I'm sure as he gets more experience, there's going to be a job for him that works out at some point, but not the best decision for the Lights to bring him in at the beginning of this process. I will say, I think we should commend Las Vegas for moving on when they did. This team's 1 point out of a playoff spot. They've got 6 points in the Jägermeister Cup. There's a lot of 2025 left to go, and they're in a really good position if they get the right coach in to make some moves and really play on and do something this year.
Yeah, I will say this. Sorry, Kayla, I know you're going to jump in there. My apologies. No, I will say this because just going on to the Valentin Noel comments. For me, look, it's the coach's job to get the best out of their players. You know, I think they do have a good core squad there. I do think they have good players. Maybe for me, missing an attacking player that can score goals, but for me, they do have the bones of definitely a playoff squad, 100%. I think the most worrying thing about for me was I watched that game against Sacramento the other night where they lost 3-0, and it was strange. Some of the players look like, and players hate to hear this, and they'll always say that's not the case, but there was moments there where a couple of players, they just looked like they gave up. You know, I mean, there was a strange, I don't know if it was a second goal or if it was the third goal. It was just strange. There was a defender that was close by that could have stepped over and listen, maybe he blocked it, maybe he doesn't, but he kind of just stands still. And there's other moments where I was looking where players had lost the ball. And for me as a coach, you're thinking, right, track back, right, initial reaction. You know, you don't just lose the ball and stand still. You got to try and get back and try and make amends, at least recover back into position and transition back. And they didn't. And again, I don't know if that's, for me, that's the coach's job to obviously motivate and inspire the players and get them playing at their level or above and beyond. And I just don't think that was happening. And for me, that game against San Antonio, that was clear. I was watching it and I was thinking, gee, what's going on here? The players just look like they're just almost waiting for something to happen, i.e. the coach got sacked a few days later,
And I'm going to just kind of ask the question, and maybe this is a bunch of nothing and I'm just reading too far into it, but how much of this also, Phil, you mentioned Miami, right? Look at the turnaround that Miami had in 1 year from moving on from him. And they have some of the same parts. There's a lot of change. They traded, the Italians for Argentinians, but, it's still a young squad of a lot of unproven talent, similar to what he had, different nationality, but still same kind of build. And they are arguably one of the best teams in the East right now, definitely one of the most dangerous. Meanwhile, you see what Las Vegas. Is there any kind of truth of seeing his previous project thrive after he's gone as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Phil said of Nocerino now has gone into clubs twice and had them perform below the level that their roster is able to perform. That's a consistent trend. And I think if you're a Las Vegas supporter, that means whoever comes into this job really should be able to push this team up the table quickly, because the framework is there for this to like Eamon said, be a playoff team that can really compete.
And the reality in the West is that it's like so compressed right now that it's still completely up for grabs. Like, I mean, there's like Vegas from where they're at could still like top the West. That's like how tight it is. It's just like that ridiculous right now.
Can I have a little bit of fun and just read to you the players who started against Rhode Island last year from Miami, that when they lost 8-1? Can I just have fun real fast? Let's start with the goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's your show.
Not really. Felipe Rodriguez in goal. Alejandro Mitrano.
He played over the weekend.
Yes. Daniel Barbier. Never know how to pronounce that one. And at center back, Dalton Knutson.
He has been great this season.
He has been great.
Yeah.
Muji Marana at right back. Let's see. Gabriel Cabral over on the left mid.
Yeah, not Remy Cabral. That would be
not
crazy.
Remy. Sorry, Gabriel Cabral. Yeah. Sorry, very different person. Brian Sosa, central mid. Joseph Desart on right mid. Roberto Molina at left wing. Michael Lawrence up top, and Alan Galvanez on right wing. There's a lot of talent that stayed in the league and with this team that performed a lot better than 8-1 from last year.
Yeah, that's listen, again, for me, that's just, again, and I hate saying it, players, but that's players not buying into what the coach is trying to do. I mean, you have to get the players buying into what you want to do, what you're trying to do. That comes from you, the coach, being the leader, inspiring them, motivating them. That's not great, because you're right. There's some players there they're good players, and then you look at some of them. Knutson's a great example. Look at him last year. Look at him this year. He looks like he's a completely different player, but he's the exact same player. So what's happened? It's just a mentality. And again, for me, that has to stem from the coach. It has to.
So let's go ahead and go over to League One, where don't look now, but the Double Birds are hot. They are going on a winning streak where they take down the Kickers 2-1. Kirkland gets the Kickers started off early, but Baker and Asante, yes, Solomon Asante, get them winning. And when we talked last time, Eamon, there was preseason, they did not have 11 players on the team. They did not have a left back / right back. They just had a hole there. And they started off bad. And now they've been unbeaten for the last, 3 matches now? What we're seeing out of Texoma actually sustainable, and are they a possible threat for one of the last playoff spots?
Well, listen, you got to say yes. I mean, they've won the last three. But even before that, I remember watching them. The first game where I kind of noticed. So I watched most of their games at the start of the season, and I'll be honest, I was worried. They looked poor. They were off it. They've got experience at the back, but the players that they have at the back, I wouldn't say they're not blessed with pace. They're experienced. They understand the game, but they're not blessed with pace. And I think that was, again, we're talking about a new coach coming into the league. Adrian Forbes comes in and wants to express himself, wants to play a certain way, whether that's pressing, whether that's a high line. And I remember the first couple of games, teams were just playing the ball over the top. It was literally as simple as a ball over the top, and they were through on goal. And I was worried. I had numerous conversations with our coaches about this, thinking that, hey, like they could be on for a really poor season. And then I watched them. I remember the Jägermeister Cup against El Paso at home, and it ended up being it was 0-0. And El Paso, listen, were flying at the time and scoring goals. And I was thinking, that's a really good defensive performance. And they seem to have just carried it on since then. And again, when I talk about coaches coming into the league or first-time head coach, I'm looking at Adrian as a great example of somebody that, didn't just say, it's my way or the highway. He changed things around. He found out what, again, brand new squad, what their strengths were, what worked out. And I think it all started with they are hard to break down. Again, they have big defenders, strong defenders, Jordan Chavez and Kilwine. They have good defenders there that know how to defend a certain way. And they've done that and really looked. They've looked an interesting team. Obviously then you have Asante who can produce things out of nothing. He still has that talent in his, in his locker. So, no, I'm really impressed with how Adrian Forbes has turned it around, has found out what is needed, what's required, how to get the best out of my squad, and we're seeing the fruits of that now because they've been impressive the last few games, I have to say.
Yeah, I think two things with Texoma in general. One, the verticality, the way that they build up with the ball, and they're so good about finding Spengler between the lines. I think that's been a real focus point for them that's helping out a lot. Specifically within the Richmond game, kind of the other point, Ozzy Ramos's presence in the midfield and the way that they used him as this stopper whenever the kickers tried to drive through Barnathan in the pivot. I thought Ramos was down his neck, constantly making him uncomfortable. And that was the spark behind that Teddy Baker goal at the beginning. It constantly furnished them with chances in transition. You pair those bits of excitement that this team can generate with what Eamon was saying, with that defensive structure, the improving chemistry. It may not be the sexiest football all the time, but it's a formula for a team to get points, get wins, and be in the thick of the playoff race. Full credit to Forbes, because we, as a group on this show, went around and said we thought this team might be historically bad, but boy, have they figured it out.
Yeah, I think you definitely, I think, caught it with the Ozzy Ramos shot, Fuego legend, just absolutely tearing it up for Texoma. No, I think he was crucial to them having structure, because I think for the longest time it just looked, to your point, Eamon, it looked like they were kind of lost and it was easy to play through them. That is not the case for Texoma anymore. I think the sort of day that Richmond were in for actually came after Kirkland's goal. Like, it was very indicative when Kirkland had to think way too much about the backflip celebration. It was clear that he wasn't comfortable with it, and as soon as he broke it out, I was like, I don't know if it's kicker's day, despite the opening goal. So no, all in all, I think a really great performance for Texoma, and they have the quality in this team to kind of pick up the scraps when they fall to them, and right now they're feasting on those, and that's enough in League One, is being a little solid defensively, and then letting the rest work itself out and taking your chances up top. That's all you can ask.
Let's go ahead and kind of move on to a big rivalry match, which was Union Omaha versus Forward Madison. Union Omaha get a win. They finally get that 1-0 win. Forward Madison, they seem to draw everything, but it's mostly because they can't score. The front three for them, which is Luca Dorado, who's in on loan from Birmingham, Garcia, and Derek Gebhardt, they just cannot put the ball in the back of the net, but they seem solid defensively. Are we more excited that Union Omaha were able to get the results going, or are we seriously concerned over the lack of attacking presence for Forward Madison?
For me, let's start off by saying absolute wonder goal from Cello.
Yes.
I mean, what a goal. We obviously, I had him last year here, and yeah, he's capable of doing stuff like that. Really intelligent, smart player. So I was delighted for him to see him score, and against his old club as well. I think he ran up and celebrated, and I think he pointed to the Omaha crest, maybe just tongue in cheek. I thought that was funny, but no, look, the game itself, again, 70% to 30% possession for Madison, and Madison, most games they dominate possession, and that's how they play. Matt likes to dominate possession, hold on to the ball. It's a strange one. I've watched Madison so much this year, and I'm still trying to figure them out, because for me, and Matt, forgive me for saying it, I just and it's not, I don't know what's going on there, but for me, Madison were my favorites to definitely be a top 3 team this year. They have the consistency of most of the players that they had last year. They've brought back, and they've built upon that over the last couple of years. And I thought this was the year. This is going to be their breakout year to actually challenge. Madison have been in the league for 2019, and great crowds, record attendances. Great place to coach a game, to be at a game, and they're just missing that piece of silverware. And I don't know if it's going to be this year, to be honest. They've looked really poor. Clearly, look, they've scored 7 goals. I mean, that's the lowest in the league. It's really poor. And you look at it and you wonder why. I mean, Gebhardt, I will say this, Gebhardt is scoring. I mean, I think he's gotten 4 goals this year, but bar him, there's nobody. And you say, all right, well, you're missing Cheney, but they still have Galindres, they have Devin Boyce, they have other players there, Bartman, they've players there that can score goals, and have proved it in the past. I'm still, honestly, as a coach, I'm just watching them. I'm not actually delving into them, as I would if I was coaching against them. But watching them, I still can't figure it out. There's something missing. They look okay in games, they're okay. I mean, defensively, they look okay. I will say this, another thing, just on the defensive side of it. I mean, for me, Bernd Shipman has been one of the best goalkeepers in USL League One over the last couple of years. I don't know if he started with an injury, but they've been, obviously, Wallace Lapsley has been in goals for a few. I like Shipman. Now, I know Shipman played against Omaha, and the consistency, I do think you need a consistent goalkeeper there, because I think they've only kept 1 clean sheet this year, and they haven't conceded many. I think they've only conceded 9 and 9, but they've only kept 1 clean sheet. And last year, they definitely kept a lot more clean sheets. Definitely, I think, per game than they have so far this year. But look, obviously they can't score goals, and that's the big issue. And I'm not quite sure. They're creating chances. They're creating, I wouldn't say they're creating loads of chances, but they're definitely creating enough that they should be scoring more. But it's just a case of nobody has their scoring boots on at the moment, and it's really, really hurting them, because I think they had 1 shot in the whole game against Omaha, 70% possession, and 1 shot, 1 shot on target. And before that, they had scored 2 goals in their previous 2 games before that, and both were penalties. So I'd be trying to correct that first and foremost, because listen, you can't win games if you can't score goals.
I'm 1 second, John. I know you're about to jump in, but I have a quick question actually for Eamon, which is, a few weeks ago we had a quote come from Ian Cameron where he talked about how possessive teams cannot win in League One, and how he said that teams how he tries to play, which is very fluid, try to control the game, does not win. Counter-attacking, counter-pressing football wins League One. Are we seeing a little bit of that, or is that even really a thing, and that's just his own personal experience with Tormenta?
Well, I'll say this. If that's your personal experience, or if that's what you feel, then why do you continue to do the same thing? Genuinely, it's listen, I mean, I'll be honest, look, Ian's a USL League One champion. I mean, he's been there, done that. But again, Tormenta, they want to possess football. I remember we played against Tormenta last year, and he was shouting on 10 passes, get your 10 passes in. And I'm thinking 10 passes, like 10 passes for what? And they were just playing it in their own half. I think we ended up winning the game 3-0, and yeah, they had more possession, but again, like you got to figure it out. And it's tough on Madison because the last couple of years, Madison have been really good, and they haven't changed. They've always wanted to dominate possession. I know Matt well, and Matt's a possession-based coach, and it's worked to an extent over the last couple of years. But you got to be able to mix and match your football. You have to, whether you play home, whether you play away, you come up against different teams and low block, high block, depending on what they do. You got to be able to mix up your games and how you play, because then it just becomes predictable. And at the moment, it is predictable because, as I said, they're dominating possession, but they're not creating anything. So to answer your question on USL League One, I don't think there's a one way of success. I think you can do it multiple ways, but I do think you got to be able to mix your game up. I do think if you're just a predictable possession-based team, it's easy to play against. It really is. You got to be able to mix and match, and that's something that at the moment maybe Madison aren't doing well enough because they're not creating many chances, or as many chances as they should be doing, and then they're definitely not putting them away.
Yeah, and if you think about Madison and the way they dominate the ball, there are just these moments where they get into the attacking zone and things feel like they're stalling out. I think the number that's been interesting to me, they're dead last in successful dribbles this season in League One. They were 6th last year. So that's something, when you think about dribbling, that's a factor where you beat a player, you're forcing the rotations, you're buying yourself some more space. For whatever reason, personnel, bad luck, whatever it is, Madison doesn't have that edge that they had in seasons past when they were a bit more effective. I look at this game in particular where the front line is Garcia and Dorado and Derek Gebhard. I know we like what we've seen from Dorado with the cameos with the Legion and what he did in college. Garcia at one time had some moments with El Paso, but these aren't players that we know can do the job in League One. On the slide, they've tried to integrate quite a number of new players in the attacking line at the wingback spots. So some of it is chemistry. I just think it's a whole mix of things that are making this team underperform when they get to that area of the pitch.
The amount of El Paso connection in this match in particular really was like off the charts in terms of Gebhard, Garcia, Brent Coleman on the bench for Omaha, Josue Aron Gomez, and Dom Casciato. That's like an insane amount of El Paso influence on this match. I think your point, John, with the fluency with Madison, bringing in Villader, it's a classic case of like names on the sheet good. It doesn't look great in practice. Like we've seen it with a number of teams over the last couple of seasons across League One and the Championship, where it looks like a really strong roster. It looks like, hey, everything should be clicking, and it just doesn't for whatever reason. I think the one question that just remains, and this is not a new question, but like Garrett McLaughlin, like just what caused the drop off? Like since he got to Madison, he just hasn't been the same player that he was in North Carolina. He produced like crazy, and they just haven't found the spot for him. He hasn't consistently even been in the team, and I think that's like unfortunately some of the story is in integrating a lot of these new folks over the last couple of years, they just really haven't found like the right formula, and it's clearly again not added up to goals, which is what you would have expected with some of the pieces that they've got in this team.
Yeah, I will say, like Garrett McLaughlin, I've always been a fan of him. But when you watch North Carolina play, they were different. Like they had absolutely no problem going long over the top, and he had this partnership with Alex Anderson. I always thought McLaughlin was really good, coming showing defeat, but he loved spinning in behind as well. I thought that was one of his big strengths. And I don't think Madison just don't play. Again, they like to play through the thirds, possession based football. They don't really play those balls. So maybe, you haven't seen the best of McLaughlin, but it's just mad. You look at their team. I mean, Villa, Sosa on the other side, same back three, same goalkeeper if they want. I think the midfield's gotten stronger. Carrera Garcia, Jackson Dietrich, John Murphy. They're stacked. And for me, it's funny, like, because you look at, I think prior to the game against Omaha, they'd drawn like ridiculously. I think it was like 6 games out of 6 or something. They had drawn all those games. So again, it can go either way. And obviously against Omaha went the other way. So I still feel like that it will click. These players, Villa will get his game time. He didn't get any game time at Sacramento, or too much game time, or maybe as much as he would have liked recently. So maybe it's just match fitness. And McLaughlin's coming back from injury, and Galindrez and Boyce haven't, they're not really chipping in with goals. But once that starts to happen, I like to think that they'll, absolutely climb up the table. I just don't know if it's a bit too late to really kind of get up to the top 3, which you would have probably expected Madison to be,
Well,
and to be fair, just right before we move on, to be fair, I think the same questions remain for Omaha probably on the other side, in terms of like they haven't really found their goal scoring feat in terms of this new front line. And I think there's a lot more to be expected from the likes of Gomez and company up top for Omaha. And they get, obviously a banger in this one to win it. But I think still want to see like the best out of this attacking unit for Omaha as well.
Well, let's go over to the championship, where we had a top of the table clash. We kind of mentioned at top of the show last week was Loudon week, lots of Loudon content, and they go to take on our good friends out in Charleston, where we've done a lot of content with them as well. And it ends up being a 1-1 draw. MD Myers opens up the scoring, and there was a little bit of me that was thinking, maybe Charleston is just going to show that they really are the best team in the East. But Loudon shows fight. Neiman goes and gets the equalizer in the 67th minute. And it was not one of we're 2 really good teams, let's hunker down defensively and pray we don't concede. Martin and Bierman stuck to their guns. They did their thing. They did not shy down from the fight. I mean, I guess the big question here is this a possible Eastern Conference final matchup that we just saw this most recent weekend?
I'll throw my 50 cent in. I've been really, really impressed with Loudon. I think Ryan Martin is, for me, coach of the year, definitely candidate for coach of the year so far. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed them, watching them play. I think they play an exciting kind of brand of football. And yeah, I kind of, again, I'm one of those, waiting for Loudon to drop off maybe. They start off really well and you're kind of waiting, are they going to drop off? But no, I don't think they will. I think they're going to sustain it, to be honest. Now, will it be for me an Eastern final? I don't know. I don't think so. I'd still have Louisville and Charleston just a little bit ahead of them for me. But they've been really impressive. And if they can get a home playoff, I think that's an exceptional season.
Amen. You put it up against thing I have started this year called the Lads Protocol, which is Loudon always does this shit and always looks impressive at the beginning of the year and then drops off. So the Lads Protocol is on pause for now. They've definitely shown some really good stuff. I do think, if we're being real about this performance in particular, I do think Charleston was a better side, probably deserved a little bit more. I think they were a little bit unlucky in a couple of moments. Cal Jennings will probably be asking some questions of himself in the aftermath. He had a couple of decent looks. But that being said, Loudon, they do really well at taking their chances. And I think the one thing that I'd be concerned about if I was a Charleston fan after this one is Loudon did find ways to stretch Charleston's back line and get in behind, which is not something that a lot of teams have been able to do. So I think like Loudon definitely found those moments to be able to expose Charleston a bit in a way that they typically don't. So I do think Charleston a bit unlucky in this one, but yeah, the lads protocol holding off for another week because that's a good point against the best team in the East.
Charleston comes into this game having scored 17 goals in their last 6 league games, which is a ridiculous record. So if you're Loudon, who I think a lot of the focus has been on the pretty soccer, the possession, the way they attack, this team's defensive identity is really strong this season. And in this game in particular, I thought Cole Turner and Giannis Learman were strong in central defense. It's very hard to stop what Myers and Jennings do up top. And as they've done as well as anybody has across this entire season in that regard. Yeah, Charleston had the moments where Torres or even a Nate Dos Santos on the left side found those opportunities to serve in. But I think Loudon stuck to their principles in terms of the press, tried to play that pretty football, and they got rewarded for it in the end. And to kind of go back to Kaylor's question, I don't know if I'm bold enough to say they're better than Lou City right now, but it feels like there's a pretty firm top 3 in the East, and Loudon is a part of it.
Faroux 7 saves, I think, too. So huge performance from Hugo Faroux.
A typical Hugo Faroux weekend, frankly.
Yeah.
You mentioned the back line. John, you and I were beating the drum preseason that if Loudon moved away from their 3-4-3 kind of setup from last year, that defensively they were going to be horrible and that they were just going to lose all sense of stability. And boy, have they shut us up.
Yeah,
right?
Very wrong about that. Yeah.
Very wrong. I mean, I was convinced that taking the strength of their team last year, which was their defensive stability, they weren't scoring a ton, but they were defensively solid. It kept them in matches. And I thought that because they were just going to replace from within on the attacking side. And I was like, well, you didn't have anything attacking wise, and you just took away from the best part of your team. As it turns out, Ryan Martin's a smart guy and may know what he's doing. Because, if you asked me, all you're starting is Learman and Turner in the back line preseason, I'd have been very concerned about where Loudon would be. We wouldn't be talking third. We would be talking last possibly in the league. And that shows in our preseason rankings. We had them so low. You just end up impressed. I was also looking at just some stats, and when you look at the 2 of the top 3 most passes connected and pass completed percentage, Juan David Torres and Aaron Malloy are at the top. If you just basically say a minimum amount of passes requirement, which I think was 900 passes completed, they are 2 of the top 3 players in terms of percentage. Having Juan David Torres and Aaron Malloy as in your midfield and just connecting play between those, that's just not fair. It is simply not fair for Charleston. And that's even before you get to what they do on set pieces and what MD Meyer and Cal Jennings do in open play. This Charleston team is just so much fun to watch. So how about this? Let's go over to the West, where we can talk about the hottest team in the USL, which is Phoenix Rising. Yes, Orange County has been sputtering this year, but from the very beginning, I said I was a Paul Monica truther, and these last few matches have shown that. This has been their longest winning streak since the league historic, what was it, 22 matches in a row unbeaten or winning streak. This is their longest winning streak since then. Phoenix Rising did not have all the talent on paper preseason. We thought Orange County did. Phoenix Rising just chewed them up and spit them out 3-1 to the Rising.
I mean, kind of going to something that Eamon's been underlying today, that ability for a coach to really galvanize the players, get them motivated and get them buying in. Pa Mudoka has done an unbelievable job of having those players raring to go every single weekend. The execution isn't always perfect. They took some time to figure out the ideas side of things, but you see the way that they close down in the midfield, they get out in transition. Man, Phoenix is just fun to watch because there is that sense of collective that they bring to the table. Even in this game where it's Formella playing at striker, which really isn't their first choice, they've got teenage Cyrus Cole on the wing. You don't miss a beat because you're executing like that. You're taking advantage of the fact that Orange County has a little bit less of a physical midfield. Everything just kind of played into Phoenix's hands because of that setup, because of that trust. So really impressed with everything they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny, like, you know, I go back to the coaches, and again, a new coach into the USL. Yeah, like, he's been in the States. He knows soccer in the States. Obviously coming from Charlotte, but again, trying to figure it out. And again, it's one of the things I think it was my second year in USL League One as a coach. I was all about the result, and it was in 2022, and in 2023 I kind of changed my mindset to the process. And when I think last year, obviously, the Switchbacks obviously went on to win it, but they started off, I think they lost the first 6. They got off to a horrendous start, but then they figured it out, and again, the process with James Chambers, they bought into, and they ended up winning it. And when I think of Phoenix, it kind of reminds me a little bit of it, like, because they started off really, really poor, and I was actually worried. I remember looking at them going, geez, like they could be in trouble here. Like, and again, only the first, I don't know, 5-6 games or so, but they really bought into, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the coach's name. I know it's Papa, and we'll just leave it at that. But they really bought into what he's trying to do. And even when there was a couple of games there before they went on their recent run, there was games where they were leading and then conceding late and kind of giving up points late on. And that they seem to have corrected as well. And now they're on this, obviously, run of form, which is their hottest in a while. But no, I think somebody put in a comment there about them being a contender. Again, the process, that they continue along that process and get stronger and stronger. Yeah, 100%. They could be a contender for the West come the end of the season, and definitely in playoffs, because I wouldn't at the moment. And again, it's so early in the season, but I'm worried about a team. I always look at a team and a coach and go, will they figure it out? And which way will it go? Will it go like that? And not so well, and a coach gets sacked and they don't make playoffs, or will it go like that? And for me, Phoenix Rising are going like that, and I don't see that changing. So I could easily see them doing some damage come the end of the season and the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think like the makeup of this team, or at least like the team that starts game to game, it does feel like they change a lot. And I know, given the comments are like, they have had some injuries, they've obviously rotated in terms of guys starting from the bench. You know, we have Cuejo on the bench, like comes off the bench in this one. Charlie Dennis comes off the bench, which not half bad to have a guy like Charlie Dennis, you know, coming off the bench. But I think there is something to that in maybe not being as settled of a side that still gives me that like uneasy feeling of like how sustainable is what's going on in Phoenix. But it also, on the, you know, if you look at it on the more optimistic side, it's like, look, they've handled all of these like enforced changes really well, and they've really weathered the storm in a lot of ways and come through it with flying colors. So I think all in all, like, obviously from the questions that we're getting asked of Pa Mudoka like not that long ago, I do think like they have come through well. That being said, in this game, it is worth remembering that Phoenix, 6 players were booked out of their 11. So it is a quite like, they definitely don't hide the fact that they're going to play physical. They're going to break up how other teams are playing. And I think in that way, you know, they did effectively limit Orange County, but yeah, I think the goals too, sort of, you know, they get it in the mixer and like it works. But But yeah, all in all, really great results for Phoenix. This in particular, I think it was good for them to just keep the run going. And I think if they can settle this side a little bit and get some consistent, like healthy 11s just game after game, I think they can definitely establish themselves as a solid playoff team.
I think to that point, Phil, I remember when again, Papa, I'm just going to say that when he got the job, I know people that have worked with him, and he's an intense character. Somebody used the word crazy when they were describing him. I don't think he's crazy. I just think he's intense. He's passionate, and I think what happens sometimes is, you'll go in and he'll demand so much from his players, and you either go along with it or you don't. You sink or you swim, and that also has an effect, I do think, on injuries, because I'm assuming he demands a lot in training, and maybe it's a shock to some of the players. Maybe they're not used to that, and if they're not, they can easily get injured. Maybe, again, I don't know, I'm not there, but that could be one of the reasons why there are some injuries, because he demands so much in training, and maybe he wants to, because he is an intense character and an intense coach. Maybe he demands as much as he does in training as he does in games. But what will happen is, as I said, players that you'll either sink or you swim. You'll get on board or you won't. And if he has enough players getting on board, and then players that seeing other players getting on board and producing the goods and they're winning games, I do think that is a recipe for success. Again, it's one of those, it goes that way or that way or that way. And I think it looks like it's going that way. And I'm assuming that's why, because he is an intense character. Yellow cards, yeah, because he's probably kind of, players are looking at him and they're intense as well in games, and sometimes that happens. But no, I think there's a recipe for success there, to be honest.
There's a couple questions in the chat, and we'll get to those before we wrap up. But I mean, we're talking a lot about, having players play for a coach and truly, buy into what, he's an intense guy. You mentioned the cards, you mentioned kind of the injuries of maybe what happens at those trainings. John, you said last week, your first comment was you would run through a brick wall for him, right? And I've kind of felt the same way this most recent weekend, and talking to Mark Briggs after the 1-0 loss to Indy 11, and just the intensity that they bring and just kind of the way that they speak. There are coaches that absolutely just make you do that. But John, I mean, the very first words you said was that you would run through a brick wall and do anything for Paul Amadakata at this point.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks back at this point, I was lucky enough to be there at the Phoenix game and to meet him. And I mean, he's somebody who has that energy when he walks into a room. Like, he genuinely is the real article. Like, that's intensity personified. But that's part of the deal. Like, Phoenix wanted a coach who brought that kind of personality to the mix. They felt like they lacked that for a couple of seasons. So yeah, I think he fits the vibe they're going for. And I'm excited to see how they keep progressing throughout this year.
So two quick questions. One, what did you guys think of the Phoenix most recent signing of Emers? Sorry. He comes over, just the Belgian. He comes over from Romanian Liga's one side. I got to be honest, I don't watch the Romanian league that much, but his CV looks very impressive. So it's clearly a talent. So I assume he's decent.
The people around Phoenix think he is going to be one of the better midfielders in the league. Like, the expectations couldn't be higher. There's somebody where they looked at the numbers in terms of the dribbling, the ball progression. They think he's going to be a number 8 when all is said and done. He came on in this match and kind of played the left wing a little bit, so he's got some of that versatility. I'm not saying either way if he's going to be great. We've seen players with the big numbers overseas fail in the USL before, but certainly the hype in Phoenix is real.
And then we kind of talked about it last week, but Phil Abers gets his first match with the Roots. Phil, you got to see this one in the most thrilling 0-0 draw of all time. Really, Phil, did you notice any difference between between Glinton's last game and Phil Labor's first match in terms of tactical approach or just kind of style?
I mean, I think he made a little bit of a statement in terms of some of the players that he started and maybe sending a message to some of the players that he didn't start. Jurgen Damm is on the bench to start this one, which obviously there's probably some pressure there when you've got a big name. But I think all in all, it was funny because in the Seriously Loco preview for this one, I was like, I don't know if Phil Halbert will play a back three, but Oakland Roots are a back three team, so I think he'll play a back three. And sure enough, he did. 3-4-3, just as we have, come to know from Roots over the last couple of years. So I think there's a little bit of Phil Halbert getting his feet under him with the personnel that he's got. But it was a bit of a shakeup, I guess, from what you'd expect. Some of the names that we've gotten used to seeing over the last couple of years in Oakland, starting from the bench. I was impressed with the fact that I think they made Locomotive look, they got them out of shape pretty early on and got them into some tough set piece situations, which I think was sort of the goal. They struggled with Locomotive's press early, but they were able to, I think, effectively sort of bypass it and then wore Locomotive down in a weird way. Locomotive looked really, really leggy. By about 60 minutes, it was just Moreno looked like he could barely run. I don't know what was going on, to be honest. They haven't played a lot of games or anything like that, but El Paso just really looked leggy. And I do think it had something to do with the fact that Oakland was stretching the play, using the whole width of the pitch. They really got the ball into wide areas frequently. I thought that Locomotive would take more advantage of their numerical advantage in midfield. I thought when you're playing against a 3-4-3, the one advantage you have in a 4-3-3 is that you've got three central midfielders in there who can really play through those other two and keep the other team from playing through the center. And Tyler Gibson, I think in particular, impressed me just with the amount of work that he was doing for Oakland and the amount of ground that he was covering and not making it feel like they were outnumbered in the center of the park there. So all that being said, I think, decent enough start for Phil Halbert to get the point. I would say they were kind of hoping more than, it wasn't a ton of great chance creation or anything like that, but they did limit Locomotive, who's been scoring a lot of goals and is maybe, I guess, those have been drying up recently if you're not named Andy Cabrera. So yeah, a tough night out for Locomotive, but Phil Halbert, I think, decent enough start given especially Roots form, just getting a point and having a solid enough performance is probably a good enough way to get going.
Yeah, sorry, Kayla, to jump in. My look. So I've been really unimpressed with Oakland so far this year. I think they've been really poor. They were so poor against Spokane in the Jägermeister Cup. It was Spokane. I wouldn't even say it was Spokane's best game, but it looked quite comfortable for them. I've been really upset. I've just been really disappointed with Oakland, shall I say. I'll say this, it was a strange one for me. Again, I'm looking at it from a different point of view. I'm looking at, they announced that they're, they obviously, it was very sudden. They announced Gavin Clinton's gone. They're bringing in Benny, all in the space of a couple of hours, I think. So they obviously thought, they obviously had that already in their mind that they were going to do this. It was already pre-planned. My issue with it is that they announced that it was till the end of the season. Now, look, I have no problem with somebody taking over till the end of the season. It's the announcement, because for me, that sends a message to the players that they're not quite sure on this guy. They're only giving him till the end of the season. And for me, again, I'm going along with coaching and the psychology of trying to get your players to buy in and play for you. That's dangerous, because players now, if things don't go well, they don't get some, the results don't pick up. Players know that, right? Well, this guy's not going to be here anyway next season, so I don't really have to impress him. And for me, that's a dangerous game to play, because you want to go in as a coach and make an impact, and you want to have that authority, and you don't want to scare players, but Phil, you mentioned that with the changes in the weekend, maybe he was giving a couple of players a kick up the arse and a little bit of reality. But again, those players might be thinking, well, you mightn't even be here next year, so that's dangerous. I don't like that. I think that's really tough for a coach to go in till the end of the season, especially when it's announced till the end of the season, and really kind of pick those players up and get them playing to their standard and what's expected. So I'd be worried for Oakland. Again, I don't know too much about Benny as a coach and how he'll do, but I think Oakland are going to struggle, to be honest. I don't see any upturn in results. Not for me.
Well, and speaking to the confidence point, this is Oakland's 5th coach in 5 years, I think. Of course it's a short leash. These players don't believe that anybody on that sideline is going to stay there. So why do they respect him? Why do they buy into the ideas? And even I know Feilhaber in his public statements has been saying it's going to take a couple weeks to really move on from the old system. But this, for my money, was basically identical to the struggles we've seen, the lack of energy we've seen. Really, the only change was moving Hackshaw out to the left of the back line and getting Bravo in the middle. But even then, Bravo came off at halftime because Feilhaber didn't trust the idea. It was a hesitant start for sure. I'm not saying he's not going to be successful, but I certainly wanted to see a bit more.
I guess there's a couple of ways to look at this. For me, Eamon, if you're going in somewhere as a coach and you know that they go through coaches 5 and 5 years, how much would that worry you about your own longevity there?
It would, but again, that would be prior to taking the job. If I've accepted the job and I'm going in to take it, well then, I've accepted that's the way the club is. Obviously, in the back of your mind, you're going to be worried about that. And also, look, coaches speak to each other. They let each other know in terms of clubs and how things are in the background. But it's obviously not a good thing. But I don't know. For me, if I went into a club like Oakland, knowing that they've changed coaches relatively, quick, I definitely wouldn't want that to show and wouldn't want that to play in my mind. I'd want to go in with the mindset, definitely towards the players that I'm here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm here, and this is we're going to change things because clearly things are not working. For whatever reason, things are going to change, and I'd want to go in with that stance. And the players, you're either getting on board or you're not. Again, because they're not my players. I didn't sign those players. Somebody else did. So it's kind of a clean slate, a fresh start. But you want to go in and you want those players to buy into what you're trying to do. I'm assuming, you obviously Birmingham fan over there, and Mark Briggs, fantastic coach, fantastic signing. And I know he's going to change Birmingham's fortunes because he's just too good of a coach not to. But again, he had he's I don't know how long he's got, but he's got longer than definitely till the end of the season. And I know what he's like, and I saw his comments after the game the other day, and it's basically sending a message to the players, it's you need to get on board of what we're trying to do here, or not. You can always leave, and in time I'll replace you. But how can someone like Benny go into Oakland and say, well, if you don't get on board, we're going to replace you? Well, he mightn't even be here to replace them. So that is a worry. That would be a worry, but he's taken the position. He's obviously full confidence in what he can do, and he can change those fortunes around. As a coach, I wouldn't like it. But if I've accepted the role, that's gone. That's the back of my mind. I'm going in, 100% trying to change things.
Well, as we are wrapping up the night, we have the two last things we always do. Does anybody have any final kind of USL thoughts kind of going on for them? I know for me, the Soul opened up their kind of stint in the Coliseum, which was really cool. And I kind of want to point some people to League Two really fast. Grant, you can hear about all this on the Semi-Pro USL Show. Happens every single day, 9:30 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday. But Asheville City through 4 matches, 21 goals for, 0 against. That's
Is that good?
Yeah.
decent.
Are they the ones who played Greenville? Who'd they play in the
Yes.
cup?
Yeah, Greenville,
Okay.
yeah.
It's Greenville.
And they almost beat
Yeah,
Greenville.
they-
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. No, they've Asheville have always been impressive, to be honest. They've always put together a good team. You know.
That South Central division only gets 1 playoff spot because of the way the playoffs work. And there are 2 teams on 12 points, 1 team on 13 points, and only one of them is going to get to the playoffs. And Asheville is not the team with 13. It is absolutely nuts. It's going to be really exciting to see how they shape up, because if they can get into the playoffs, they are going to be it's going to be an absolute bloodbath for whoever takes them on. So that's a fun one. I just kind of want to shout out. How about some other USL thoughts, if y'all have any?
Oh, I'll be at the Westchester Alta game this weekend, so hype for that.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
very,
Mount
very
Vernon,
cool.
stand up.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get worried about El Paso. Like, I know that seems weird to say given their like place in the table and everything like that. Something feels off about their front 3 right now. It was starting to feel weird with how unbalanced it was in terms of like the goal production coming from one player. Now across the front 6, like this is clearly Wilmer's, like these are Wilmer's guys, like these 6 players, and nobody else can appear until after like 85 minutes have elapsed in the match. And that to me is just like really concerning, because that can't be how it works for the rest of the USL season. Like they will not make it without rotation. And if it's Torres, DeRoma, Calvillo, Moreno, Avila, Cabrera every single game, like we're in for a long rest of the season, I think, unfortunately.
The way he's setting up with Ricky Ruiz playing so deep, like almost like a third center back in possession, feels like such a misuse of Ruiz's skill set. But I mean, Wilmer knows him better than I do. Obviously, he's had him around at multiple stops. You're a weird watch at this point, Phil. I'll say that.
Gabby Torres playing in midfield, but like sort of still playing left back while Ricky Ruiz is in the team is like it feels like a hat on a hat, where it's like these 2 guys are doing or should be doing the same thing essentially. And because I get the Torres move into midfield, but it almost feels like I mean, not to use like, you know, Premier League stuff, but it was like the calls for like Trent Alexander-Arnold to play in midfield, right? Where it's like, well, he drifts into midfield anyway. And it's like, well, yeah, it's different when a player starts in midfield versus when a fullback inverts and floats into midfield. That's you're doing different things. And yeah, I don't know. There's just something like a little bit strange. Like it feels like nobody's able to exert themselves fully in this shape. And I don't know. It's like there's a lot of good that's gone on, obviously, this season, and it's a hell of a lot better than what we were used to last year. But like, I don't know. It's just the vibes are not as good as the table suggests, I guess.
Yeah. No. Lastly, I mean, I'm gonna throw my 2 cents into USL League One. No, I can't not give a shout out to Spokane. I think they've been phenomenal so far to start the season. And for me, I had them as a top 3 team, but I think they are. I think they are the best team in USL League One. USL League One has been crazy this year. I mean, it's everybody's beating everybody, drawing with everybody. I don't think anybody is gonna. I think those playoffs are going to go right till the end, but I do see Spokane as that number 1 team. And I will say I have full confidence in I'm going to put my name out there, and full confidence in Omaha and Dom. Dom is what a coach for me, as I said, best coach in the league the past couple of years. And I can see them just figuring it out and getting themselves into top 4, top 3 position. To be honest, I just think they're too good not to. And I think Dom is too good of a coach not to figure things out. Maybe bringing a goal scorer in a transfer window. But yeah, Omaha top 4, top 3, and I think Spokane are going to win it. They have been Lee Weidman again for me, USL Championship caliber coach. Only a matter of time before he does make that move. Perhaps the first USL League One coach to get a USL Championship job. But yeah, that's my last kind of piece on USL League One for tonight.
How about some final thoughts for the night, Eamon? Like going on personal life, anything on the TV, any good book, or just any interesting little bits going on in your life? What's up?
Yeah, TV. You asked me this last time, actually. I've told people back home. My sister actually recently, I told her to watch a movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think it's brilliant. Have you seen The Sinners?
Oh yeah.
No.
I haven't seen it yet. I need to.
So, hey, some Irish in there, eh?
No, I'm there in the movies and I'm watching it and I'm thinking this is a good movie. Obviously, there's a lot of music, jazz, blues, and I'm enjoying it. And next thing, an Irish classic, the Rocky Road to Dublin breaks out, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? But yeah, it was brilliant. Actually, a brilliant version of the song as well. But really good movie, lads. Phil, Kaler, anybody else watching? I watched The Sinners. Has probably been the best movie I've watched in the last while. So, yeah. And then look, just keeping busy on the side with some coaching and stuff. And I hope to be back. Hope to be back in the USL soon.
Phil, what about you?
Well, I actually got in person to so my daughter turned 3 today, so we had
congratulations.
Happy birthday.
What?
Yeah. No,
What's
I
her
know.
name?
Corinne.
Corinne, happy birthday, Corinne.
Yeah. So she so we had a little celebration. So I know that feels crazy because I actually I took like a hiatus from this show like 3 years ago. And last weekend we got up to Detroit because being from Chicago, the Cubs were in town. The Cubs are actually good this season. The Tigers are very, very good this season. So we actually went and took her to her first baseball game. So yeah, we went up to Comerica up in Detroit and took in some baseball. I got to see the Cubs in person for the first time in probably like 4 years. Yeah, just a blast to get back out. And now she's got to go to a Detroit City match. That's the next thing on the docket. But yeah, aside from that, we're in the home stretch of Top Chef. So me and John are just like locked in right now. This is it. Finale.
Thursday night. Let's go. I'm
on pins and needles. So
broke my heart that Massimo got cut, man.
Can I tell I'll tell the story very briefly, but we were together for my niece's birthday was a couple of weekends ago. And so we were at my sister's house, my brother-in-law, like we all watched Top Chef, my whole family, but my mom had left my sister's house before me and my sister and my brother-in-law and my wife, we watched it together, like after the kids went to bed, but my mom was already gone. So we watched it together. My brother-in-law was falling asleep like during the episode. So he actually didn't see what happened. But the next day we say like, man, Top Chef, Mom, you got to watch it. Like it's crazy. And it was the episode where Massimo went home and my brother-in-law just blurts out like, yeah, it's crazy. Massimo went home or whatever, like spoils the episode for my mom. And we all just turned to him like, what are you doing, man? Like he just completely spoiled it. And it was like, and my sister's like, you weren't even awake. Like you weren't even awake when he went. And yeah, it was just very, very funny. But yeah, Top Chef is serious business around these parts. And we're right in the thick of it now.
Right. That is right.
The business end of the season. So yeah.
You kind of mentioned the Cubs. Like last week, 2 weeks ago, we had a USL show, like kind of equinox happen where Palace, Spurs, and Liverpool all won. And that same weekend, the Reds and the Cubs were playing against each other. So it's like all of us were just having a massive sports equinox moment, which was bizarre.
And the Cubs ate up the Reds bullpen.
Yes, they did. But if the Reds could play the Guardians every single week, it'd be awesome. Over 500, we're here. John, how about you?
Yeah, well, quick plug. I'm going to be co-hosting PHNX talking about Phoenix Rising tomorrow night. So
Very
tune in
cool.
for that. I never stop podcasting, apparently. In the free time, I'm in the middle of like an 800-page book about the history of medieval Japan, and I'm loving every second of it. So go get a book, people.
Very nice. Love that. You were history major in college,
History
right?
major, yeah. Well,
Nice.
business and history double because I have to stay busy or I'll die, basically. But yeah.
I actually did forget one plug on the USL side. I will be on Orange and Black Soccer Cast after this. So previewing the Orange County El Paso match with the lads over there. So for any of the night
Great
owls out
folks
there.
over at OC, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Speaking of books, I've talked about it with Oliver Gage last week. The Expected Genius, Ex Genius, that book, the James Tippett book, seriously fascinating read. It is an easy read with, hey, if you're like me, there's lots of pictures and graphs. They make it make sense. So it's a seriously easy read, very tangible concepts or very hard concepts put into very tangible ways. So it's a very fascinating read. This most recent weekend, me and my wife chaperoned a church trip to a beach camp. And there was so much that happened. I don't have time to talk about all of it, but there was a just bizarre moment for us. There was a lot of bizarre moments, but my favorite is a kid walks up to my wife and they was like, "Hey, Miss Catherine, you see that guy, Mr. Kaler?" And she was like, "Yeah." They're like, "We have a question about him." They're like, "Yes." And they're like, "Is he gay?" They asked my wife if I was gay.
Oh no.
And she was like, "My husband, Kaler." They're like,
That's
"Yeah."
unreal.
I'd love to ask the kids why. Why did they think that?
I
Came into their head for them to. Were you dressed a certain
No.
way? Or?
I think my swim shorts were pink, and that's all they needed.
That's it.
Kids come out.
Kids,
Kids
man.
come out with the best.
Kids,
It's so innocent. They come out with the best. Whatever's on their mind, they just say. They're brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that was the weekend at church camp, I guess. So, lots of fun stuff. Hey, this was a great episode. Eamon, thank you so much for hopping on. Obviously this Saturday we have Super League Final. Seriously, check that out. We are planning loosely a watch along here. We're going to try to get some people in and out as it goes. So if you want to watch us watch the game, because a lot of people seem to like that when we did that, we'll be doing it maybe. So be on the lookout for that. The USL Show kits, those are done being ordered on Friday, June 13th. They're super affordable, super comfortable, and they look amazing. Help us get to Portland, Maine. And every day, or two more things, every day, semi-pro USL Show, all things League 2, W League, every morning, 9:30 a.m. If you want to catch it live, it's always in podcast players later. And Kit Season has done like 3 interviews, including 2 that haven't dropped yet, including one with, I think it's the co-founder or co-owner of AFC Ann Arbor. So they have lots of fun stuff, lots of really interesting listens, a ton of fun. Check all of it out. There's so much USL content to take in, like Orange and Black Soccer Cast. Immediately after this, Phil, get like some hot tea and relax yourself or something. So lots of good stuff to consume. Thank you all so much for listening. And for the first and final time tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.